Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today we're going to get into a continuation of our must-have modern cards at the common level. This is just modern cards available to fight in the future modern rank battle league. We will exclude all alphas, betas, and old reward cards and promo cards. We're just looking at Untamed, Dice, Chaos Legion, and new reward cards. And like I say, this video will be entirely about common, so we'll go splinter by splinter. We've already done legendary, epic, rare, now we're doing common. Before we get into it, my name's Dwayne Cunningham and I go by Infidel1258, and we cover the Splinterlands all day, every day, because it's changed my life and I think it could change yours. It does so by offering you non-fungible tokens and cryptocurrency as a reward for your time and attention. And though those payments are trivial, over a long enough time horizon, they will snowball into something meaningful. Both because you accumulate more and more of them, but also because they are the NFTs, the cards are deflationary in nature, and that means that they will appreciate with time due to their limited number of circulating supply, as well as the growth of the community playing. If that sounds interesting, stick around, stay tuned, let's get into it. So we'll queue up. We got our rewards, our Untamed, our Dice, and our Chaos. And we're specifically looking at common, and we're looking at regular. And so there's a lot of common monsters. We'll start with red. This is more prolific. There's more options here than I think with rare, definitely than epic or legendary. So this could be a long video, but I'm going to try to keep it under 40 minutes, which is how long the rare video took. I think legendary might have been a 20-minute video. Epic was a 30, rare was a 40. So let's keep this to 40. Okay, so must have common monsters. We're just looking at the newer cards. So cards such as the Etten Spearman, which has the classic, the old reward style border, is excluded. Exploding Dwarf is excluded. And the others here are included. Okay, so I'll do row by row, and then amongst those, if I get too many choices that I really feel are amazing, maybe at the end of the video or toward the end of the fire splinter analysis, I'll say, okay, that one, no, not that one, and yes, these 3 or 4. Let's see. So the Venari Heatsmith is a very good card, especially at the highest levels. Here's the thing. If you're playing a Diamond or Champion, I think this is a must-have, and I think the value makes it, the price makes it such an amazing value. You know, 3 cents per card makes it, in my opinion, that's practically free. You know, this is like old Splinterlands card pricing. And for so many months, people talked about how the cards in this game were too expensive. It was too expensive to play this game. It's just for rich people. It's just for whales. Cards like this now are affordable, and you guys often aren't buying them because it's not meta, it's not super expensive, it's not, you don't think it's ever going to appreciate. And I say, put that all aside and ask yourself, does it add utility to your deck? Firstly. Secondly, do you enjoy playing the game? Thirdly, do you believe in the future development of the game? And if so, accumulating assets like this one, as I introed in the video, non-fungible tokens that are limited in number and that are going to be bought up as the population playing the game grows, it's a recipe for appreciation. So I think from an investment standpoint, that's so cheap, it's worth looking at just because of the price. But from a utility standpoint, especially at the higher level, I really like the card. For 3 mana, you end up getting an Amplify on the fire team, which works well with, let's see, who do I use it with? I use it with Serpentine Soldier. It's an older card, but it has thorns on it, and so I give that Amplify thorn damage. I'll put the Serpentine Soldier in the first position and this card in the last. That means I have thorn protection on both the front and rear. And then the armor on this thing, you're talking 4 armor and 4 hit points, which is, you know, 8 hit points. That's really high for a 3 mana cost card. That's really, really high. Usually 5 mana cost, you get about 8 hit points for about 5 mana. And yeah, there's some, like, for instance, the Helicore Conjurer or the Kelp Initiate that only costs 2, and they give you 2, they cost 2 mana, but they give you 8 hit points. But those cards, well, the Kelp Initiate is very expensive. It's not 3 cents. And the Helicore Conjurer is really cheap, but that would be another card that we'll talk about later. So Amplify is amazing. The Thorns, it buffs itself. That's one of the really cool things too. This card's gonna work in your low mana matches. It's going to amplify its own thorn damage. The void armor is making the full hit points accessible to you. It's not like without void armor, you really at the end of the day are just looking at your hit points. But when you have void armor, it really is like having 8 hit, which makes it quite resilient. So this is almost certainly a must-have card, and in part that's because of the cost. So let's remember that and carry on. Radiated Scorcher. To me, this is a card that you definitely want to have at level 3 because you want to have that access to that shatter. And think about plays where melee can attack from any position, and you're going to want this card in the 3rd, 4th, 5th position. Maybe you even put it in the 1st position as a meat shield. But if you bury it somewhere where it's going to be safe, it's going to constantly be shattering your opponent. And usually in those melee only battles, what happens is it's very common for people to put somebody in the 1st position with a huge amount of hit points, something like a big dragon with armor and hit points, or big beefy tank that's going to have huge hit points and armor. Well, this guy's going to come in and just shatter that. So I like having this, especially, it's free at level 1, but go ahead and get 14 copies. It's practically free. You're talking 50 cents and you're going to get that shatter. We're going Scavo Chemist. I really like this card at the higher levels. It's kind of like a secondary meat shield or tertiary meat shield. I'll play it in the 3rd position sometimes. For 2 mana cost, I'm getting 6 hit points that'll protect me against snipers, or put it in the last position and it'll protect me against sneakers. And it's got the headwinds and the slow and the cleanse, all of which are a great complement. Cleanse helping fend off those poisons that are so common in the game. Slow always helping you control the speed, and whoever punches first usually wins most. Headwinds is always great too. So frankly, I like them all. I think they're all necessary, but let's keep going. Maybe there are a few I can tell you not to buy. It's just that they're so cheap. That's the thing too with these cards. With the 5 cents, we're talking $20. Is that what we're talking here? 400 copies. Yeah, we are. 400 times 5 cents. Exactly. $20 for a max copy of Radiated Brute. Okay. This is a card though I could say to you, we can pump the brakes a little on. I do like it. It is very strong. And at the highest levels, it can be a train, it can absolutely drop bombs. Because the 4 attack goes in rage and it becomes 6, I think. And then if you're adding any inspire there, it can be even larger. So I do really like it. Well, I like it. It's probably unfair to say I really like it. I own it. I use it occasionally. There are other cards I like better, and previously we covered the what's it called? There's a 7 cost. There's a 7 cost melee. The Phineas Rage. I like that one better. So this is a lot more expensive, but it has way more hit points. So to me, Phineas Rage takes preference over something like a Radiated Brute, but the cost differential there, if you are going today to get a secondary tank, the question is, do you want to spend, $200, $300, $400 on the Phineas Rage, or do you want us to come out and spend $20 on a Radiated Brute? It's hard to argue that Phineas Rage makes sense in that context. So while I don't love it, maybe it is the card, especially for some of you new players. Lava Spider is a card, again, I feel a little bit like Radiated Brute. I have it. It's quite good. It's quite good. It's got a good amount of hit points with the 6. It's got this, the Snipe and Snare. Snipe is an interesting play, but I don't have a lot of snipers with the red team, and therefore it becomes less relevant. If you have a Jotun, this becomes really interesting because it has blast damage. And so Snipe is perfect. You want snipers, but I don't have a Jotun. So that's a limitation to me, but it's so cheap. And the poison is great. I like this card. I use it sometimes, but it's maybe not it's perhaps not a necessary card. Antoid Platoon is really good. for 4 mana, and if you position this correctly and you're playing it at the higher levels, by the time it reaches the first position, you know, I don't usually make this my primary tank. It's usually, you know, in the second or third spot as a backup if my first tank drops. And then by the time it gets there, it's got, you know, 6, 7, 8 hit points, which makes it a real proper tank. And if you partner it with Tarsa, it's going to be doing 4 attack because there's 3 base at the highest level, and then you add 1 for 4. It's a very strong card actually, and for 4 mana and for 7 cents, very cheap. It's probably a must-have. Right now, of all the cards I've shown you, I feel strongest about Heatsmith and Platoon. And that, again, not saying I don't like the others. Garlock Minotaur. This card I don't really like, and I never have. But as we move into the modern league, it might have more of a role because some of the older fire tanks are going to be retired, and therefore it becomes more interesting. I still think I don't love it. It's graded as True Strike. You know, that's important when you have a slow monster. But the lack of shield, the lack of void, the lack of armor means to me that this thing will die sooner than you wanted to. And even though it has a good amount of hit points at the highest levels and the retaliate is quite powerful, I still value it quite low. And for the value, I'd say no. For 13 cents, I'd actually spend my money in other ways. Cobalt Bruiser is a card I use a lot in certain niche moments, but that's the key. It's more of a niche card. I like it for Little League when I have fire, and I like that it has knockout. So when you're doing knockout with the highest levels 4 damage, it becomes 8, and that's assuming you can stun the opponent. But it happens to be the case that there's a lot of stun on the fire team, and there's a rare card, there's an epic card, there's a lot of good stuns on the fire team, especially if you're playing in the wild format. And then if you mix dragon in there, you're going to get even more stuns. So I feel like it's really easy to put Cobalt Bruiser's knockout ability in to work. And I like the art too, by the way. I like that one a lot. Antminers is really cool too. It's in some ways it's better than Platoon because it's just, well, it's half the mana cost, and it's roughly the same. Like, I mean, yes, it's doing less DPS, it has fewer hit points, but I like it for the same reasons, right? The scavenge is so key, and it still has the shield. I really like that card. If I was only going to pick one, I probably would go Platoon though. Especially, I mean, the cost, utility, they're both playable, and they both scratch the same itch, so I would go Platoon. So right now I'm still gravitating towards Heatsmith and Platoon out of all of that we've seen. Magma Troll isn't actually, I like this card more than I like the Radiated Brute also. So there you go. There's another example of a secondary tank on the fire team, which is to say, you know, I really don't like the Radiated Brute. Yes, this is 10 times more expensive, but it's got Affliction, which I value that a lot. There's a lot of tanks that have heal, and the Affliction comes in and just puts that to an end. And in the low mana matches, the ones where I'm using Cobalt Bruiser, I'll drop the Cobalt Bruiser, the Magma Troll. They're both relatively fast with 4 speed, and I think 4 speed. Yep. And then you get some stunners in there. The Kobold's gonna double up on damage. You're gonna get an Affliction from the Magma Troll. I find it's a working formula. And so if you needed a secondary tank, and if you're playing in Modern League specifically, and if you can't afford the rare one we just referenced again, my goodness, what was his name? Phineas Rage. If you can't afford Phineas Rage, this would be my second choice, and third would be the Brute. Okay, so Goblin Fireballer is the third card I'm going to say you really need. This is one of the stunners that are available in the game for the fire team, and for 2 mana you're getting stun and 46 cents per. Yes, this is getting a little bit expensive when you compare it to these 5 centers, but it's such a powerful card. I mean, and then with the Jotun, some of you have Jotun. This is another cheap archer to throw out there when you want to play Jotun in those lower mana matches. You're going to still be able to field a full team because of cards like this, and cards, frankly, like Lava Spider also. But again, that's more for my Jotun fans out there. So, in keeping with what we said before, I'm working on the wall here. Right now, I want Heatsmith, Platoon, and Fireballer. Etten Spearman is an older card, so we'll skip that one. Flamesmith is very good because of the shatter and repair. We've talked about that a lot on the channel. I think you're gonna find a lot of value if you use if you're playing a diamond or champ, and if you're using Grum. This is gonna shatter your opponent before Grum punches. That's gonna give the impact of your Grum and maybe allow him to kill more monsters, which lets you snowball and win that match. And the repair partners with Grum exactly. So this card was made to go with Grum. It is a bit more mana, but I think it's worth it in the context of that situation where you're using a Grum. Okay. And what else can I say? Exploding Dwarfs is great. This is a must-have card in the wild format, but in the modern format, you cannot play it. Flame Monkey is so good. For 1 mana, you got the repair and the swiftness at the highest level. Just the repair alone, if you're playing in gold, no, if you're playing in silver, you can get up to this level 5 common monster, and that is going to give you that repair, which is so important, right? You know, like I said, with Grum, for instance, or with Heatsmith, or with, you know, the Flamesmith, there's just a lot of good armor actually on this team, and that is going to give you that repair. Plus, for 1 mana, it's giving you that meat shield in those contexts where you want 1 more card and you want to just build out the team because it's, you know, you've got 1 leftover mana. You need cards like this. So, Serpentine Spy, lastly, is absolutely amazing. So powerful, it's crazy. 6 speed at gold, I think. Yeah. Hang on a second. It's a common. Yes. 6 speed at gold is crazy, and 3 attack. You know, this is where you probably need to get it if you're serious about the card and if you're serious about playing the game. But if you can manage to get it all the way, this is literally one of the most deadly cards in the game. You're talking 4 melee and poison for 3 mana. That is really, really amazing. And the speed, and if you can match it up with Quid, which is the fire summoner from the Dice expansion set, it's going to give a piercing, and it's going to punch through and kill some of these lower. You're going to face off against enemies on the other side of the aisle that have relatively low hit points and very few armor, and you're going to just delete them. So this is a very good card. So I'm going to say 4 different cards. I think you want all of these right along the wall here. And I'm going to say honorable mention to Flamesmith, particularly if you're playing at highest levels and if you rock Grum. If so, you're going to want it. Radiated Scorcher, again, you're going to want that shatter. But that's only like literally 40 cents worth of investment, so that doesn't even count. But these ones all, you're going to want them maxed out. I think they're super good, very, very powerful. Let's carry on to blue. From the water splinter, Helicore Bandit is one of the best sneak attack monsters in the game because of its speed, because of its flight. It's super evasive unless you're running into a snare monster, and then it's doing a crazy amount of DPS. Again, just like we were looking at with the Serpentine Spy, but this one doesn't have poison, and this one is a sneak, and that one's an opportunity. But for 3 mana, you're getting a huge amount of DPS. The water team has become a very effective melee team, and this is part of that picture. And so this card is definitely must have, and especially for this price point. I absolutely think if you've got a decent water team, or if one day you want to have a decent water team, buying a max copy of this or 400 individual BCX and just sitting on them, this is both a good investment and a powerful card. Stonefish, I don't feel strongly about this one. This one actually, it kind of sucks in my opinion. You want 1 copy, but you're going to have that anyways from playing, just from having it's a free card. So I don't get this card at all. I mean, yes, if you want to spend, you know, the money to make it all the way up into these higher leagues, and if in those certain rule sets where melee can happen from any position, yeah, it's 1 more attacker. That's cool, I guess, but that's pretty niche, and I say no thanks. Rule Cephalopod I like, and this has become a nice partner to the Murdali Guardian, who is is she rare? Murdali Guardian, who has the Murdali Guardian here has both tank, heal, and repair, remember? And so when that gets partnered with the Cephalopod, you end up getting, especially at the higher levels, you get a crazy amount of hit points, and you've got a tank healer who's also repairing, this thing becomes really resilient. And picture the low mana matches where there isn't necessarily some big magic bombs. Like you're not going to drop 4 or 5 magic with a 3 mana monster. So the Setherpod actually has a lot more survivability in the low mana matches. It's quite successful in the right context, and it's very affordable. So I'm going to say Setherpod's probably a must buy. Bandit is definitely a must buy. Kulu Swim Hunter is very good. It has no abilities, but those ones are interesting because they're functional in those matches where you lose all monster abilities. And so a card like this, if it had all kinds of abilities, would be a 7-8 mana monster. But because it has no abilities, it comes in cheaper. That's really helpful when the rule set of the battle excludes abilities anyways. You're never going to see the benefits, but then in those contexts, you're usually forced to spend 6 or 7 mana to get, an archer that's doing that sort of damage. But not here. So it's very, very good. I don't love archery. And I guess if I was on a limited budget, I might first look at other cards. Like, I'd say, do you have your Pelican Bandit sorted out? Do you have your Setherpod sorted out? Do you have your Flying Squid sorted out? Do you have your Deep Lurker sorted out? Demented Shark. All of these cards I'm rolling off to you. They're all melee focused, and they are all part of what, in my opinion, makes the blue team super successful in 2022. And so while the Kulu Swim Hunter is very good, I would say to you, focus on those other cards first. Cards like Demon Shark, cards like Flying Squid, Deep Lurker, Bandit, Demented Shark. Those are really, really part of the extremely powerful melee play of the blue team these days. Cartesian Fighter could theoretically be part of that. I don't love it. It's got the repair and I own it, but I don't usually use it. And I can justify passing on it. It's got too few hit points. It doesn't have any void armor, and therefore it can be deleted with magic quite quickly. Frost Lion is interesting for the 2 mana cost, but for the cost, I'd say just go ahead and, for that cost, you could buy yourself, 2, 3, 4. You could buy the whole top row. So just skip the Frost Lion and Cartesian Fighter, even though they can be interesting in certain ways. Waverunner also, I don't like that card so much. It is good. It's got a good amount of damage. It's got decent hit points, but there's cards out there like the Squid that I find are so much better. And because of the new interplay on the blue team with Kellia Frendel and how she adds speed and armor, cards that have blind or high speed become really interesting because Kellia is adding speed. Blind is going to contribute to that speed meta, and so you can contrive a team that's really going to have a successful evasive survivability. So I don't love some of these slower monsters, or even these monsters that don't lean into that. Yes, this is actually a fast card, but it doesn't have any blind. Therefore, I'd rather spend 2 extra mana, usually. And also, the knockout on this one happens to be less effective because it is so fast. And so the question is, who's gonna stun the target so that the Waverunner can knock them out? And so I've always found that this one card, its knockout ends up being largely irrelevant. Of course, there are stuns that you can seek out. I'm just saying there are more of them with certain other splinters than the blue. And so I don't love the Waverunner. So I'm going to say pass on the Waverunner. I'm going to pass on the Frostline, pass on Cartesian Fighter. Sniping Narwhal, I'm going to pass on that also. It is a good card. It's, decent amount of damage, piercing, stun, and snipe. Those are decent abilities. But like I said previously with a different snipe card, snipe is its own thing. If you're going to do a snipe, you really want at least 2 snipers. I don't have an advanced archery team for the blue team. And so I just don't mess around leaning into one card that needs a backup. Like I really feel you need to run 2 snipers to make that play interesting, or even 3 and go hard on it. Same with sneak attack monsters. I usually would do 2 sneak attack monsters. I wouldn't just do the Bandit. I would do the Bandit, and I would maybe add the Deep Lurker in there who's going to seek out some opportunities, or the Bandit, and maybe drop like a neutral sneak attack monster or an older. If you're playing in the wild, there's lots of good options. So right now I'm saying Bandit and Flying Squid and Cephalopod with an optional Swim Hunter. Deep Lurker, like I said, is very good. It's a must buy. The combination here with, again, the high speed, the opportunity to poison and demoralize, it's a great card. 6 mana, it's a great card though. You know, maybe I would ask, because of the price, I would ask, did you sort out these things first? Because, you know, getting Flying Squid is more important than getting Deep Lurker, especially because of the price differential. Demented Shark, I mentioned earlier, this is a reward card, so you're not going to be given a copy of it, and you do need at least one copy to get that inspired. But I would say you're going to want at least to the highest level you're capable of playing at. So if you're playing at silver, you're going to want the level 5. If you're playing at gold or diamond, you're going to try and get up to the thorns. I love the card. I think it's worth investing all the way up to the 400 BCX max copy. I think this is going to become even more expensive as time goes on. There are some affordable copies right here, like 41 cents for this one, which is, you know, like 20% cheaper, 25% cheaper than the average price down here. So this is an interesting card. Inspire is great, especially in those rule sets where melee can go from any position. You bury this guy somewhere and he's going to give that inspire to your whole team. Maybe put him on the back end and his thorns are going to do work. I like him a lot. Albatross is a healer, tank healer at the higher levels, and I think it's worth getting up to that 100 BCX. I personally stopped there. I don't think I went all the way. The extra speed is interesting, because if you go up to level 7, you're going to get one more speed. And if you go up to level 9, you get one more speed again. I don't know if that's worth the price. I'd probably just stop at 100. Yeah. And Feasting Seaweed, another opportunity monster with a decent amount of speed. Scavenge again. So there's, like, this is a crazy melee team nowadays. It wasn't always the way, and now it is. Sea Monster is an old reward card, so we won't look at that one, but you guys know it. It's a good card. Okay. So this one is melee tips. You're looking at Helicore Bandit, you're looking at Cephalopod, Flying Squid. I'm going to say even the Cephalopod could be, or you could step away from that if the budget wasn't there for you. Squid to me is a must-have. Bandit to me is a must-have. Deep Lurker is a must-have. And then if the budget allowed, I would do Cephalopod, and I would add in the Demented Shark and the Albatross in that order. And yes, the Deep Lurker is great, but the question is, are you going to have an opportunity play to tag onto? Don't make this be the only opportunity monster you have. If you're building a blue team to be your ace, don't miss out on it. But if blue is one of your tertiary decks, like your less important decks, this is this card you could skip out on, save the money, and buy some of the must-haves. I'm saying Deep Lurker is really, really good. It's not perhaps, it's like on that cusp. It's really good. It's just depends where you're playing and what the Water Splinter is to your game style, okay? If you already had the Feasting Seaweed, I love the Deep Lurker. I love having 2 opportunity monsters to run together. I love having 2 snipers to run together. I love having 2 sneaks to... So that is feeding into my recommendation, because I'm saying to you, that's why I'm stepping a little bit away from the Lurker. But if you already had the Feasting Seaweed or another opportunity monster, then go for it, because that's a really good price for what it is, because it is a good card. Okay? Bandit, Flying Squid. Those are the 2, and Demented Shark in top 3. Okay? Earth Splinter. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. Helicore Mercenary to me is a must-have tank. It is now, and it will be in the future. The price is ridiculously low, and it will be expensive one day. It might be 4 years from now, but I feel confident that Helicore Mercenary will be a very expensive card one day. The Heal Giant also is a interesting tank. I think they're both tanks, and that's important to me. When I build my team, I'm always looking for tanks, and then carry cards, and then supports. I would argue the Helicore Mercenary is probably both a tank and a carry card. especially at the higher levels where it gets the heals and the retaliate. Yeah. And the Hill Giant is interesting for 9 hit points and 3 mana and the stun and a good amount of damage too. I really like it for low mana matches. Cards like Venari Scout are great with the dodge and damage output. The Knifer is up there too. This is a more niche card though. The Thorns is interesting. The Backfire is interesting. It's got great speed, but I don't like that it doesn't have a sneak or an opportunity. I don't like that this is going to be my main tank. No, thank you. So it's interesting, but it's a no. Venari Scout is in the running, but Mercenary and Giant are a definite. Morphoid is again one of those where I just feel like, you know, maybe get it to the Thorn ability, but then just leave it be. Harvester is interesting. It has Enrage, it has a good amount of damage, and the Oppress works really well, but it has no shield, it has no void, it has no armor. So I could see passing on it, but it's a reasonable price and it's a good card. Barking Spider I like a lot. And this card used to cost $10 back in my day, as my good buddy Luke would have me say. This card costs $10 for a level 10. So what would that be? 400 copies. Or no, it's 10 divided by 400. It's literally 2.5 cents per BCX, which... So it's gone up a lot since then. But it's a great card because the damage output is quite high, even in the gold ranges. And then the blind is why I really love it. Blind is such a powerful ability. It's a 15% reduction to your opponent's ability to hit you. And that's on top of whatever the speed differential is. It's so important that you use blind. If you're doing a speed play, if you're trying to create resilience through evasion, blind is key. I like this card. It's a low mana card. It has a good amount of archery damage. It is almost certainly a must-have, but it depends on how you play the game, and I could see you saying no, depending on if you don't really play a speed play. If you try and focus more on slow, which is the new Obsidian, she's going to drop magic monsters, mostly they're slower. Maybe you don't bother with a Barking Spider, even though it is very good. If you wanted to do a more melee focused, Venari Scout, Helicore Mercenary, maybe an Orc Sergeant, then the Barking Spider becomes pretty interesting. Goblin Thief would go in there. Vulture, but that's an older word card. Goblin Dartling. I don't own it. I don't use it. I don't want it. Not saying it's bad. You know, the Shatter is interesting, but I don't really use it or want it. Goblin Psychic is part of the new, in my opinion, part of the new green meta. And the evolving green meta, because first of all, tank heal makes it necessary. Second of all, affliction is very powerful. Dispel, silence, it's got a great package. It's got the 2 DPS, which is going to turn into 3. Good amount of hit points. Of course it's good. Yeah, Goblin Psychic. Nectar Queen, interesting, but not must have. Really good even, but not must have. Triceratops, same thing. Yeah, good. Interesting, available in the low mana matches, which is certainly helpful, but not must have. It's too vulnerable to magic, and magic is too common, especially from the green splinter these days. Orc Sergeant has Inspire and Reach. If you are playing at leagues where the Inspire is available to you, I really like this card. If you're playing at Diamond, I think this is a must-have, especially for this price point with the 60 cents per BCX. There you go, right there, 200 bucks. I think that's worth strong consideration if you're a champion level deck out there. I like it a lot. I use it a lot. I've delegated it to a friend, and that's I delegated almost my whole green team to a friend, but it's a great card and I have one. Goblin Thief would be part of that picture. If I was building a strong melee green team, I would go Sergeant, Goblin, Venari Scout, Helicore Mercenary. I'd be building, you can build out that team. It's actually very powerful. And there's others too. And then you'd want the slip spawn in there just to be that distraction on the back end. Okay. These are old rewards. Old rewards. This is one of the best cards from the opportunity in the game. This is a great healer, but again, they're not applicable here. Failed Summoner is exceptional at highest levels, but it's so expensive. So I'm going to say it's interesting, but I don't necessarily define it as a must-have because the price point is so high. Now, it is probably worth it, but most of you should focus on other things first. Helicore Mercenary must-have, Venari Scout must-have, Hill Giant must-have, Psychic must-have. Those are the only ones I feel are must. And other ones that are good on the page include the Barking Spider, the Sergeant, and the Failed Summoner. Okay, moving on. Life. Helicore Conjurer must-have. Too cheap, too good, absolutely amazing. Evasive, high hit points, magic reflect, works well with the amplify that you can drop on the white team. Must-have. Sunki Harvester, interesting, good, I like it, but not must-have. It is good. I have it, I use it, I like it, but it's not must-have. Even though it's really cheap, and if you're looking for cheap cards, this is going to serve you well, but it's not must-have. Gargoyle Scrapper, again, you probably get a copy up to level Void, which is practically free, and then just forget about it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course it could be good for you to have up the two attack. In the long run, you are probably going to want that. One day when you're playing in Diamond or Champion, you're going to wish you had a copy that had 2 melee because, like I said earlier, you slip it in the back somewhere in those in the Equalizer rule set where everybody has the same number of hit points. You're gonna be happy you have it, but that's pretty niche. And I say save the money and use it elsewhere. I'd rather buy a Harvester than a Scrapper. The Binding Reflector is interesting. It's got that blind, which, like I pointed out earlier, is so important. I just don't really know how to use this one effectively. It's got Magic Reflect, but it has too few hit points and it doesn't have Void Armor, and therefore if you put it in the first position, it's going to get deleted by Magic. So the Magic Reflect is really irrelevant. And then it doesn't have phase, so the blind is interesting, but not pivotal. It doesn't, like, the synergy of the abilities within this card is not, in my opinion, perfect or really thoughtfully united. It's like if there was a Void Armor here and then the Magic Reflect, I would like it so much more. Or if there was a phase ability and then the blind, I would like it so much more. As it stands, it's an interesting contribution to put in maybe your back position as like a sneak attack defense. But really, I would only do that in the context where melee could attack from any position. And so that makes this card niche. Even though I like it, it's not must-have. Chaos Knight is must-have, especially at the highest levels. It's got great damage with the Inspire. It's got a good amount of hit points and armor. It's got the shield and giant killer. This thing is a train. It just comes through and destroys whatever it rolls over. But it is vulnerable. It's not perfect. It's vulnerable because of its hit points. There's lots of rule sets that'll work for your... You'll be just fine using this card. And I think you're all going to want it, and the price is ridiculous. Chaos Knight, Helicore Conjurer, those are 2 must-have. Chain Spinner. I mean, it's interesting. That's a crazy amount of hit armor. And it does have Void Armor. And in the Equalizer rule set, this thing's going to have 20 plus hit points, which is great for 5 mana, but I don't love it. And for 20 cents, I would probably pass. I'd rather get the Blinding Reflector and the Sunkai Harvester and have money left over than get the Chain Spinner. Stitch Leech is great and probably is must-have. I think it is must-have. The Life Leech, with the amount of damage you're doing, it creates the Life Leech having huge hit points by the time it dies, if it dies. And so I think it's very powerful, and for 3 mana. So we're up to 3 cards on this page so far. Warrior of the Peace is really cool too. It's one of these nerf cards with huge hit points. Demoralize, Headwind, Silence. That's nerfing every type of attack. I really like this card in like a secondary or a third position because it can be your sniper defense, and it can also just absolutely just nerf your opponent, right? So it's a great card. It's good in the rule sets where monsters lose their abilities also, because you've still got 14 or 15 hit points, which is one of the highest hit points in the game. Good card. Probably not must-have, but a good card. You need, even though the Warrior of the Peace might not be must-have, a card of this nature with the high hit points is must have. So if you don't have this one, you need to have a different version, whether it's a neutral, whether it's, you know, yeah, I guess a dragon or a neutral, something like that with 10, 12, 14, 16 hit points. We got to pick up the pace here. Cave Slug is really good, but too slow. And then it has slow, so I just don't know how to fit that in. I own it, I like it, I use it, but I don't love it, and it's not must have. Baby Unicorn is interesting, but no, that's an old reward card. Old reward card. Herbalist is good, but again, you know, as is the case with the white team, often the speed on the archery monsters is a little bit slow, and they're a little bit weak, and I don't like that because I end up I fire second and I die, or we have too few hit points and we die. So I don't know about the herbalist. I own it, I use it, I like it, but the boatman, however, is probably a must-have because it has the repair, it has the shatter, and it works really well with a lot of the main tanks, such as the shield bearer, or there's a lot of the shield bearer comes to mind because the shield bearer has taunt. And he has a huge amount of armor, so you want to shatter that, and then you want to repair your own shield bearer, and therefore lone boatman, yes. So lone boatman, chaos knight, conjurer, stitch leech, those are the must-haves. Death. We got to pick up the pace. I got 5 minutes here, 7 minutes. Helicore deceiver because it's so cheap. Carrion shade, no. Crypt beetle, again, I really like it in certain contexts. Maybe that's not enough to call it must have. Helicore deceiver, yes. Stitch, shadow snitch, I could pass. It's good, but I could pass. Riftwing, yes. Shabby is good, really good with the cripple and the piercing, yes. Oh yeah. So deceiver, shabby, yes. Riftwing, yes. No. These are good, by the way. I'm just being quick. Phantasm is a no. Marrow's Ghost is a no. Partly I'm saying no because of the cost. Giant Scorpion is a no. Again, cost, low hit points. That's, you know, it's good, but no. Undead Rex, really good. Decent speed, great damage, stun, trample. But the problem is it doesn't have piercing, and so often it'll hit an armor, and then, you know, it's not going to help you. And it has no void, it has no armor, has no shield. Nightmare is in my opinion, amazing, and you're going to want it if you have a kitty, especially. This is a must-have. If you don't have a kitty, maybe it's not, but I still really, really like it. Slime Ball, I think this is nowadays a must-have because there's a redemption and a weekend play where you can do like a double or a triple weekend and like a double redemption, and you can be very effective at killing your opponent. So Slime Ball, there are ways that this is must-have, especially at higher levels. Maggots is good if you're getting it to highest levels, but I could pass if not. If you're in the lows like silvers or golds. Same with Undead Badger. I really like it at the highest level. 3 damage is great with a good amount of speed. It's really, really good. But maybe it's a pass if you're only in silver or something. So the only ones I felt super strong about are Deceiver, Shep, and that's because of the price, and it's also got a good kit with the flying, retaliate, and backfire. Shabby because again the kit with the cripple, pierce, and sneak, and a 4 damage and 7 hit points is really good. Those two, yes. Riftwing, yes, because again, headwinds is great. Flying and scavenger, this thing can have 10, 12 hit points by the time it makes it to the first position if you push it in the second or third. And backfire is great. So 1, 2, 3 cards: Deceiver, Shabby, Riftwing, and maybe Nightmare, depending, and probably Slime Ball if you've got the new Death Splinter with the weakened summoner. What's his name? New summoner. There he is. Thaddeus. If you got a Thaddeus, I say Slime Ball's worth it. Okay, lastly, Dragon. No, Dragon quickly and then neutral. Are we down? Is there only one card for... Yeah, Naga Brute. Okay, this one, interesting. Good, even. The Void Armor, the Thorns, the Return Fire. I really like it. I own it and I like it. I don't know that it's must-have, but you want some cards like this. The cards that don't attack, the cards that have big amount of hit points, whether that's hit points or armor, or both, that have things like Return Fire and Thorns. They can be an interesting off-tank. If you don't have the Naga Brute, you need other options like it. And so it might not be a must-have, but make sure you have cards like it in your deck. Lastly, neutral. From the neutral deck, because of the cost and because of the kit, Flying, Void, and Enrage, this is a good tank. And one day we're all going to want one. We're all going to wish we all had it. And most of us aren't one day going to have it. But that's going to take a couple of years before it runs out of circulation. And then people start coveting it. So at this point, for 2.8 cents, buy it, buy it, buy it. Disintegrator is interesting also, but it now double the price. Maybe not. You know what I mean? If it's between these two, I guess just go Gargoyle. But it is a good card. I like that it has Demoralize and Trample. The Trample's kind of a little bit whatever unless you're up in here. And even then with 3 attack, you know, you're not going to trample very often. Demoralize is great to have in the back lines, especially in those rule sets where melee can go from any position. Retaliate is great too. The kit is a bit disconnected. You know what I mean? Like trample should work with like 4 or 5 damage. Knockout should, you know, have a stun somewhere nearby. I don't know who you'd be looking to. Retaliate, in my opinion, works best with high speeds. So the kit feels a bit disconnected. So maybe I pass on that. Lion, yes. Hireling, yes. And I would recommend getting it up to camouflage at least. It's better all the way. But you want that camouflage so your repair can stick around and keep doing what it's doing. Chaos Agent is really good if you're playing at the highest levels because of the backfire, dodge, and phase. It becomes a tank for 1 mana. Supply Runner is really good, especially if you're playing where you can afford the swiftness. Like I said, silver. I really like it. Swiftness is so important, and it's going to work well with your Sloan, helping your white team be more quick. Horny Toad, pass, even though it's very inexpensive. It just has too few hit points. The poison is good, but too few hit points. Elven Defender, pass. Lots of hit points, but very little damage. Really boring. No thank you. Rusty Android is old. Archer is old. Mantoid, again, sniping. I'm just not into it. If you have a snipe build that you like to play, if you have 2 or 3 snipers on a certain team you like to do, I think it's really great to have options, and you might like this. But for me, it's a pass. Battering Ram is really interesting for the cost. Maybe I pass on it, but getting it up to the Shatter at the 100, which is going to cost you about 90 bucks, is really good because, again, there's a lot of armor in this game. But 1 damage is so low, and if your opponent has shield, so then maybe you need it at level 10, and that's 400 bucks, so maybe it's a pass. Lastly, you need Sandworm, absolutely. Parasitic Growth is a maybe. Okay, so Sandworm, yes. Gargoyle Line, yes. Agent and Runner, yes. That's it, guys. Thanks so much for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.